welcome to the first NAEA Town Hall conversation with some very special guests. We're so thrilled that you could all join us tonight. We really appreciate you making time. My name is Mario Rosero. I have the great privilege and honor of being the executive director of NAEA. And just for context, I'm a lifelong art educator. I spent 10 years in the elementary and middle school classroom as a visual arts instructor, and then the last 15 in central office administration in Pittsburgh Public Schools, Chicago Public Schools, the Kennedy Center, and now I'm really thrilled to join you as a lifelong member of NAEA, and we're just so thrilled that we can develop and present this conversation this evening. Before we get started, I did want to just take a moment to acknowledge the Native people and Native lands in our homes and communities where we all come from across the country. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge them. And I also want to take a moment to just send all of our warm and best wishes to everyone at this very challenging time. Please know you have a community, but I know that we all have our own unique experiences, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and also send some good energy your way. So why are we hosting these town hall conversations? We know that this school year, more than any other, has been quite challenging, and that we're facing new hurdles that we've never thought of before. And as we work with members and we talk to art educators in the classroom, you know, we're continually hearing that it's an ever-changing landscape and environment. And so even with resources to help navigate what looks like in person back in the classroom, or continued remote and virtual learning, or what I think is probably the hardest, which is the hybrid, which is the blend of the two. And many of our art educators have faced all of those so far. And so we wanted to turn some of the strategies and the supports that we've been producing and talking to folks about into an actual live conversation with members so that we can help you problem solve and imagine whether it's best practice or help you figure out that thing that's really been on your mind, or to, you know, be excited and hopeful for what's to come. And so we believe we put together an expert group of folks tonight who can help you think through that. In order to really live that town hall vibe and mentality, we did receive questions from art educators in advance, so they are embedded throughout the conversation. And then we will also save time at the end. So anyone that has a question throughout the conversation, feel free to put that in the chat, and then my team will manage that behind the scenes, and we'll try to bring those questions in at the end. But I will warn you, because we are so glad to see over 230 folks join us tonight, we may not get to every question, but we will have a recording of the chat. So I just want to talk a little bit about the format for tonight, which is a little bit different. Tonight's session will take the form of a long conversation. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be 3 hours in length. What it means is that we're going to do pairs of guests in intimate conversation settings. So think about it as a relay race of two-person timed conversations, right? So in each pairing, the first person will be the interviewer and the second person will be the interviewee. They'll have 6 minutes for a discussion. At the 5-minute mark, they will hear something that sounds like this. That'll be their 1-minute warning to wrap up the conversation. And then the interviewer will exit and a new person will come on. And then it'll keep toggling until we talk to all of our experts. And you will meet them all and be introduced to them all in the actual conversation. So this is meant to be insight from multiple perspectives. We have a large-scale national perspective, from the administrator perspective, from the state level, from a support perspective, from a high school perspective, from an elementary on-the-ground perspective. We're really trying to provide multiple vantage points into what school life is like right now. So once again, please use the chat for any Q&A questions that you'd like to generate. We're really trying to cover as much ground as possible. Please know that we are streaming right now on Facebook Live. And we give a reminder to everyone to please use speaker view while watching this first portion of the conversations for this evening. So, all right, panelists, I think we're all set, and we're going to jump into our first conversation. It's my great privilege and pleasure to welcome our first guest, Dr. Earl Franks, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of Elementary School Principals. Earl, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here, Mario.
Great. So we're going to jump right in. So, many of our members who are art educators in the classroom are adapting to all the current demands on instruction, whether it's remote, in person, or hybrid. So as someone who's been a school administrator yourself, and someone who works with thousands of school administrators across the country, I was hoping that you might tell us what are some of the best practices that you see in terms of managing the day-to-day in this current climate.
Mario, this is a very difficult question, as you can imagine, because there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on the situation, as it varies from state to state, district to district, and school to school. I think the most important thing to remember is that every school is unique, and the school principal has to work with their teachers, support staff, parents, communities, and certainly the school district leadership to do what's best for their particular situation. What works in one school, whether it's in a remote, in-person, or hybrid, may not work in another similar setting. It depends on multiple factors. And obviously in remote environments, ensuring that every child has access to devices as well as internet connectivity is critical. This may mean working with local businesses, nonprofit organizations, PTAs, etc., to collaborate on providing these supports. With in-person and hybrid situations, a lot of best practices are determined by the building capacity, the size of the classrooms, in order to accommodate CDC and local health agencies' recommendations for social distancing. In fact, some schools are having to alternate groups of students due to the limited instructional space in the building. There are just so many variables related to reopening schools. Ultimately, you have to do what's best for your individual school community. And that can be problematic, and especially if the school district wants all schools in the district to be the same. As everyone who works in education knows, this is not easy. There are no easy answers. Some parents want their children in school, while others prefer remote. We recommend listening to state and local health officials to determine how to best serve the students in a safe environment. Flexibility in a situation like we're in now really helps a lot.
I so appreciate that. And, already I hear three really important points, which is, it's not a one size fits all. You have to honor each school community, and that flexibility is key. Now, and we know that none of those things are easy, but it really does, that local context matters so much. So I know one of the things that our members will really appreciate is that you have an arts background. So I'm really thrilled that you could join because you have a music education and band director background. So shout out to you for that. We love administrators that come from the arts. And so, I think your perspective can be really helpful for us. I really want to talk a little bit about, from that administrator perspective right now, who's trying to do their best to juggle multiple priorities and create schedules and really deliver school, but a model that actually honors and respects the arts along the way. So if you could just talk a little bit about how can NAEA members work best with their school district administrators to make those things happen, and what you're seeing on the ground.
First and foremost, all good school administrators want every program in the school to excel and be great. They want every student to be successful. So it's important that as arts educators, that you work with your principal. Don't expect to get everything the way you want it to be, scheduling, etc. Be willing to compromise and know that there are many classes and programs in the school. Scheduling is not easy, certainly in this pandemic. Too often, those in the arts ask for unrealistic classes, too many different grades in one class. Just remember, if you offer multiple grades in one class, the school schedule almost has to stop, especially music classes with many students. So have viable solutions and options to provide your school administrator. Don't just complain about your schedule. Be flexible and work to see the big picture, not just your classes and your program. Build a strong relationship with your administrative team, your guidance counselors, And where we're at now, model mitigation protocols, first and foremost. Always follow board policy. Always follow board policy. This is critically important to avoid liability issues. But hopefully the district and the school plan follows those guidelines from your state and local health agencies. Student safety and your personal safety should be the most important factor in your plan. Do not take shortcuts. The consequences of this are too severe. Don't fall into the trap of thinking things happen to other people, not me. And also remember, lastly, your program is not the only one. Be a team player, offer to assist as needed, and you will not have a perfect situation during this pandemic. Again, be flexible, working with your school administrators, trying to see the big picture.
I love this point around, I'll call it being solution oriented, right? So, bringing multiple solutions to a challenge that you're facing. It's like, I always say, don't leave every decision in the hands of someone else. If you come with the problem, come with a solution as well, because oftentimes, like, I encourage our art educators to be bold in terms of speaking up and being proactive and really sharing those ideas and strategies. I'm not saying it's easy, especially if you're isolated or you're the only art teacher in your community, but it's like, find those allies so you feel like you have the foundation to speak up and really share those solutions. So Earl, I know we're just about at time. I'm going to ask you my easy wrap-up question, which is, what are your tips for self-care right now at this moment?
Exercise, sleep, healthy diet, happiness, whatever that means for you. Relationship, hobbies. By all means, love what you do. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Awesome. Earl, thank you so much. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. At this time, please join me in welcoming Alicia Lee, Coordinator of Fine Arts for the Maryland State Department of Education and founder of Sister Cities Girl Choir.
Hello, Earl. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Great to have you, Alicia, and so glad to have this opportunity to chat with you for a few minutes. I know you work across art forms to provide support to arts educators. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in classrooms, especially visual art classrooms, and what specific supports seem to be the most helpful?
Yes, well, I am so fortunate in Maryland to have an incredible network of fine arts supervisors from our local school systems. And quite early in the pandemic, they came together and we collaborated on the creation of the Arts Together guide, which I believe we're going to drop a swag bag link in the chat, a swag bag full of helpful links, but also all of these documents and resources that I'm sharing from the Maryland State Department of Ed. In that guidance document, which was the first of its kind, we're so thrilled by that. It's been downloaded by folks in all 50 states. And at this point, over half of the world's countries, in addition to that. And what we're seeing is some guidance around remote, hybrid, and in-person learning across all 5 arts disciplines. So if you are, teachers are looking for, or also arts leaders, or also school leaders, or also district leaders, right, are looking for some guidance as they prepare for remote, hybrid, or in-person learning around sanitization, equipment and materials, distancing in dance classes is very different than distancing needed in a choral environment. So that specificity, that resource has been really helpful. In addition, we also, this incredible network of fine arts supervisors. I see Michael Bell is here tonight from Queen Anne's County Public Schools in Maryland. This incredible team also put together a social emotional learning resource that looks at the ways that our state standards align perfectly with CASEL's SEL competency strategies. So you can check this resource out. There's a few crosswalks in there. There's crosswalks in every arts discipline, secondary and elementary school. And visual art educators could not be outdone. They have 2D and 3D examples in both elementary and secondary. So it's a really great resource, and that's been very supportive. We've used it at the state level to access Title II funds to be able to provide over 130 hours of professional learning, all led by arts educators this summer for folks across all content areas. So we had science teachers, social studies teachers coming to learn from arts educators about collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, right? The stuff that we're really the best at.
You bring up a couple of very important points. First is SEL. We know that's always important, but certainly now during the pandemic is probably more important than ever. But you also talked about getting input from this team approach, not just one or two people. You got input from a lot. So thinking about that, how are you managing morale among art educators in these different settings?
That's fantastic. You know, I'm an artist, so I'm a choral person at that. So all I know how to do is collaborate. I don't know how to do anything else. And I'm lucky to have a network of arts folks, arts leaders in Maryland who also only know how to collaborate. We've created 2 professional learning opportunities for teachers in Maryland. One is called Embrace, and it provides a model, an online model for online learning that, of course, for adults, that also keeps us open, curious, and reflective. So we've had slam poetry workshops, we've had table readings of plays, we've had lots of different things in all of the art forms: visual art, music, dance, theater, media art. And that's a really great opportunity for teachers to, again, get that adult SEL, right? So do that self-care for self, and also through a creative practice, and also pick up some key strategies for teaching and learning online. The other opportunity we've been able to provide is AREAL, the Anti-Racist Educators in the Arts Learning Lab. You know, we are living through a double pandemic of not just COVID-19, but of course the uprisings that we've seen all around the world in support of folks who are combating police brutality here in the United States. And so as that continues to swell, as it will, we want teachers to be prepared. Education Week this week published a new report that tells us that only 18% of teachers feel that they have received enough training in anti-racism, but 86% of them are interested in incorporating these skills and strategies into their classroom. So we're trying to fill that gap with the AREAL, which there's still, applications are still open, and it's a 6-month professional learning program that provides a stipend and CPD credits for full completion, in addition to this network and cohort of other arts educators that are passionate about social justice. So we're really excited about that. We see that as a big morale booster.
That's a great deal. You receive professional learning and the stipend as well. You can't beat that. So I hope folks listening will take advantage of that.
I hope so.
NAEA member Maggie sent us a question about managing supplies and materials. So with your view into classrooms across the state of Maryland, what about addressing I'm teaching K-4 art on a cart. Do you have any suggestions for messy projects, such as how to manage supplies like paint, glue, or clay, or students aren't spreading the virus through shared supplies?
Absolutely. I'm turning right to my incredible arts colleague from Prince George's County Public Schools, Lisa Stewart Whitehead, and I'm using the Arts Together guidance that they've prepared there, where they're talking about wet supplies, things like paste, clay, paper mache, and what they're suggesting is, number one, packaging it in smaller containers so that it can be used in single use. It's for single use, and also just remembering that we cannot recycle. All right, the clay classes I've taken, sometimes I've made entire projects out of recycled clay, and that just is not available to us at present. So we really want to make sure that those wet things, paper mache clay, and all those kinds of things, that we're making sure that they're in small doses and single use.
In terms of handling the cleanup with no drying rack and one sink while keeping students from getting too close to each other, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen teachers talk about key strategies in person, like teachers the teacher themselves being responsible for cleanup and maybe making a few spaces in between. We know that we don't often have a lot of time. I've taught on a cart myself as a music educator, right? There's not a lot of time in between. So maybe just kind of scaffolding. Maybe I'm doing a session at second period that has a lot of wet supplies, but then so that I can clean up and dry things, my next period class is going to have to do something with dry supplies. Maybe they're doing a drawing lesson. So really being strategic about the way that you're planning out your day, because ultimately, like you said, we want to make sure that we feel confident when we're handing a student material. We want to make sure that we feel confident that it is safe to use.
And let's close out by Mario's great question. Sure. What are your tips for self-care, which we know students are looking for self-care, but we know teachers, administrators, parents as well. So what is your tips for self-care?
Absolutely. Well, you know, SEL and self-care starts with adults. The kids, right? The kids have to see us. We have to model it for them. For me, I like to write songs. I like to sing songs. I like to sing songs about social justice. This song is a song I like to sing all around the state. It's called Resilience. It's from the Social Justice Songbook, and it goes like this. Resilience, we are strong, shoulder to shoulder, keep moving on. Resilience, start a new plan, stand up again and say, yes, we can. Resilience. And I already feel better. I feel better just now, putting a tune into the air. So stay creative. Keep making art and stay connected to your artistic practice.
Thanks. And thanks for sharing these best practices and the wonderful smile, the beautiful voice, and hopefully before we get out tonight that Mario will sing something similar to you.
Mario should duet.
Thanks,
I agree.
Thanks for chatting with me, Alicia.
Oh, thank you so much, Earl. I'd like to welcome up to the stage Armin Barrows, the visual and graphic arts teacher at Creator Renaissance Academy High School.
Oh, how you doing, Alicia?
How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I feel nice and relaxed going into my segment now, so thank you so much for that singing.
Mary Poppins knows what it is, right? A little song in the air makes everything better. So Armin, it sounds like you've experienced the multiple layers of 2020 this year. In school, let's see, you've had in-person, you've had remote, you've had hybrid, you've had some forest fires that you've been putting out. Will you tell me, what has your experience been like, and how are you doing? How are you keeping focused and healthy at this time?
All right. Well, boy, that's a big question, isn't it? And it's going to sound very familiar, I'm sure, to many of the folks over there in the chat and everyone here. And that is, well, kind of hearkening back to what Earl was talking about, flexibility is key. Especially if you're an educator, especially if you're an art educator, and if you're just a person right now in this country, that's for sure. Biggest thing, like we said, at the end of last year, we were trying to put together an all online model for art education and made some inroads there. Over the summer, we were told we'd be going to a hybrid model. So everybody, you'll be in school sometimes and you'll be out of school, but be sure to keep the folks online in mind to keep it level for everybody as best as you possibly can. And then at the last minute, we got we got 1 week before the school year, and it's going to be all online. So whatever you were thinking for a hybrid, keep it in mind because we may go to that at a later date. So we went to an online model. We got 1 day into the school year and we had to stop as everyone went on a level 1 to 2 to 3 evacuation model for forest fires. So we got 1 day of Zoom classes and then took a week off as everybody tried to stay safe from forest fires around. As a matter of fact, one of our communities near us, 2 of our communities near us burned very completely, and we ended up with over 6,000 people in the area displaced because of forest fires in this area. And so it was a real struggle. It was a real struggle to kind of bounce back, get back to school. We did a soft reboot after only meeting half of our students. And boy, we just continued on. You know, whoever had the internet working got their internet working. Whoever had to go to school and meet with our administrators did that. So it was just constantly a mix of what we need to do, and we kind of settled on this all online model for the time being. For the second part of that is how do we stay well with our self-care, and what do I do?
What do you do?
Throw myself into my art, my own art, freelance art, art for the school, collaboration. Our fall drama production became a radio production of War of the Worlds, and so I provided the illustration for that. And my students got me into Squatchtober.
What is that?
That's our regional variant on Inktober, which I'm sure many folks in here have encountered in their time. But with a Sasquatch a day for 31 days throughout the month of October.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's great to hear that you are. I'm so sorry about, of course, about the fire specifically, but it's wonderful to hear. I come from a long line of teachers, so I know teachers are passionate about their students and they make it work. You know, Tim Gunn may have coined the phrase, but teachers started doing that first. Will you tell us, we're hearing lots of questions and concerns from arts teachers around how to go deeper with instruction and curriculum, given all of these challenges like schedules and remote learning and uneven attendance. Can you give us some advice on that? How to keep the learning deep?
All right. Well, what I've been doing, and a lot of folks that I've been talking to, is remembering the other parts of what you do. I know that for my own practice in the classroom, you know, it's we have all our supplies and we have all our references and we have everything that we usually have. And if we take those away, what do we have? And so the ideas are still there. The traditions, the criticism, the history, all those different spots we can touch on even deeper and take a deeper dive into, because it's all part of it. It's all part of it. We can touch on aspects that we would never get to in class by just kind of referencing the background behind what we were doing, you know, when we were doing all this watercolor. Where did it come from? Who started watercoloring? You know, where, you know, we can go even farther. And to that point, I've been taking my notes, all my notes from my 20 years as an educator, and putting them together into using my video skills, such as they are, putting them into a video with my narration and my take and my voice, and making it available on Canvas and various other platforms or YouTube, whatever the students can get to. So even if they make it to class, if they can't make it to class for whatever reason, that's there. And that's a great resource that's turning out to be. And they tell me I make pretty good videos, I guess.
Oh, I'm sure. Your students are incredibly lucky to have you. One of our NAEA colleagues, Manashur, has shared, if I spend the entire semester teaching only drawing, I feel like I'm cheating the students. What has been done regarding the holding of practical art training courses in view of the corona epidemic? That's their question. And also another teacher, Joseph, asked, how do you teach drawing to P to 12 students online? So I guess my question here is, what advice would you give to address providing a range of instruction from skills-based to more conceptual work?
Oh, let's see. Probably the biggest thing is remembering that you're your own greatest resource, you know, and if you've been doing this, if you have this job, you have the skills, you've just got to figure out the way that you're going to deliver that to them. And so if it involves folks going to school and picking it up live and in person, then you might have to do that. If you can broadcast it, if you can, like I had to, you know, learn After Effects and Adobe Premiere, even a little deeper than I already knew, to make a video in my voice with what I want to cover in it, then I might have to take a little time and get better at doing that, you know, and then putting it in the places where the students actually are. I've also got a document camera for live and in-person instruction. I hooked my tablet up to my array of monitors, and whatever I can do technology-wise and you know, traditional-wise, I try to put it out there for them.
That's awesome. I want to make sure I didn't miss a bell, right? We didn't hear a bell yet, right?
There was a bell.
There was a bell. Okay, we did not hear any. No,
no bell.
So let me ask my final wrap. This is the bell. Got it.
So sudden.
And so let me ask my final wrap-up question for Armin. Armin, can you just share with us, how are you ensuring that you are reaching and including students who don't have resource and easy access to materials and technology? We know that that's a real issue for all 50 states.
Making sure that we have access to them. Boy, it's keeping your lessons more about the idea and the theme and where it comes from, and then not putting so much emphasis on the technical skills. We'll get back to the classroom eventually, and we can cover that there. But you know, if you stay true to where it's coming from or what you can draw from, if you can get them really, since we have them, you know, right here in Zoom, we can really make them pinpoint and focus on some important issues and things today, keeping it relevant and what is actually happening out there. And then if they draw with stick people, that might have to do for now. I mean, this just makes sure they're getting the idea and responding and expressing themselves if that's their only mode.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to go to Louisa Teo. She's an art educator from Matthew Maury Elementary School in Alexandria City Public Schools in Virginia. How you doing, Louisa?
I don't know how many times I have to teach. I still have to take off the mute button. I'm doing great, Armand. Thank you so much. I am so sorry to hear about all the fires in your area. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, yes. All right. So, Louisa, it's great to connect with you too. We've got some questions here as well, coming from many of the NAEA members out there. The first one here is, well, it's a situation that we've talked about and many people have encountered, especially being an art educator, and that is NAEA member Shayna asks, here's my question. Many of us are on a cart and remote. How in the world do you teach anything in depth, and what should you focus on?
That is a great question because, of course, all of us teachers are grappling with that right now. Do I just do one and done lessons, or can I delve into something a little more deeply? So I want to answer it quickly, which is yes, you can totally delve into things more deeply. Absolutely, but we're going to have to be flexible, which is a little bit the name of the game with COVID-19. We'll be learning as we go along. And I feel like there are two answers or two parts to that question, because there's the question for people who are teaching remotely and online, and then there are people who are on a cart and having to deal with all the safety issues.
Right,
so probably this. Yeah, I think the easier answer is maybe online. I agree with some of what you were just saying, Armand. It's a little bit the approach you take. I feel like I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do a project with kids that might take 2-3 weeks long to really get a deeper and more finished final product. But I jumped in, because that's what we have to do right now. We just have to try, right? And, we might fail, but we will just have to learn from it. And I did find that 90% of my kids could hang with it. I had to make sure they had a folder so that they could keep their art in a place they'd be able to find it the next week. And I did hear very classic excuses like, Miss Teo, my dog ate my homework. I mean, I really, I don't give homework in art normally, and I never thought I'd hear that. And right now with coronavirus, I have to believe her. Maybe her dog really did eat her artwork. And in those cases, the kid is going to have to start over that day if they weren't able to keep their artwork. I've had parents throw things out. We're going to do the best we can. But I feel like I have been able to do some projects where I build on the skill. We chunk the project into a week by process, and we've been able to do that. So I would just say, keep trying, figure out what works with your particular group and your students. I've started with my older kids before my younger kids. I teach elementary. Then the second part I would say is for all my friends who are teaching on a cart. I have years of experience teaching on a cart, so I'm bursting with advice. But now that's all tempered with the safety precautions we have to have with COVID-19. So in years past, a big process thing that we do as art teachers is to have students help us with cleanup, with passing out supplies, all of that. We have to rethink that because we want to have fewer people touching things. So probably that puts the onus more on us. And I think Alicia mentioned that when some of the things she was saying probably means we're the ones touching it. We're having best practices, wearing our masks, washing our hands, possibly wearing gloves. But I believe you can. I did clay on a cart. I even did basket weaving on a cart. I painted a cart. I tried not to I said, no, it's not going to stop me being on a cart. But also I agree with what Alicia said a little bit earlier too. You do have to be strategic. And I would advise you to not do 4 classes in a row that are painting. That's you're pulling your hair out. I would say 1 painting project, and then the others are drawing. And hopefully your students have their own supplies, like the basics, like crayons, pencil, scissors, glue stick, that only they are using. So there is the very limited sharing. Paintbrush, 1 paintbrush per kid. I would advise putting paint on a paper palette, so it's an easy cleanup at the end and you throw it out. So I would also bring newspaper newspaper. If you don't get the newspaper, find families in your community that do. Bring newspaper with you and give a sheet to every kid for their desk. I used to roll my drying racks to the classroom in the morning before class so that the child could take their art and put it right on the shelf. No one needs to touch it until it's dry. I can touch it, but after I've washed my hands, have my mask on, so I'm doing best practices.
It's like good modeling behavior right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we can do it, but we do need to think through the steps so as to keep you safe and your kids safe. But I would say, please keep trying to do those projects. And in a way, you're blessed that you're in person and you can keep doing some of those things like clay.
All right. Well, how about that last question there? What are you doing for self-care out there?
For self-care, well, I would agree with everyone who's mentioned exercise. I try to get outside as often as possible every day. I would say family has been super important and friends. I would say I want to do a shout out to my art teacher colleagues in Alexandria City Public Schools. They've been amazing. And we've been doing a lot of lesson sharing and then just being there to be able to talk things out, gripe, give advice, be supportive, that. And then like you're doing, Armand, making art, and Alicia. Make art. There's a reason we got into art teaching and creating. And I don't know about you, but I never feel more peaceful than when I'm making art. So.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Armand. It's really nice to meet you. Now I get to greet Mario and bring him back into the fold. Mario, welcome back.
Thank you. What a great conversation so far. My goodness.
We've covered so much in this town hall, Mario. Can you tell me from your perspective how the field of art education is doing in light of this pandemic?
Yep, I really appreciate that question. You know, I'd say, you know, overall, clearly it's challenging and folks are doing more and wearing more hats than ever before. But one of the things that I think gives me hope and comfort is that I, you know, as a art educator myself and with everyone I work with, you know, we're natural problem solvers. We're used to being resource constrained and time constrained and budget constrained, and still we'll overcome that to come up with great solutions to make sure that our kids have the best arts instruction possible. So I think that natural problem solving is a real leadership trait that I would love. It's being exaggerated, but I would like to sort of turn up the volume on that for decision makers and school leaders to really recognize that as a valuable skill that every school community really needs and can rely on. So I think my greatest hope right now is that from all this, like chipping in, being a team player, solving problems, teaching in every possible environment, that art teachers' appreciation and value is really celebrated by the community. And I'm hearing stories about that. I've had some reporters contact me that are asking questions that I've not quite heard before. And they're more focused on how the art educator is in a unique role right now. And so I take that as a good sign that there's some noticing and appreciation that's really happening that is really well deserved.
Oh, that's great. Glad to hear that, Mario. What advice would you give art educators right now?
Ooh, well, I think building on all the advice that we've already heard tonight, you know, I think it's really about don't feel like you're alone or that you have to have every idea or solution on your own. Everyone on this call tonight is a colleague that's willing to chip in and share ideas. So, you know, I started my career in a very rural situation, so I know what it's like to be the lone art teacher. Of course, my classroom was in the basement. Of course, the schedule was a little wonky, and it, you know, took me a little time to find those other art teacher colleagues. And when I did, they sort of like opened me up to this new world. So, you know, when I was talking to Armin for preparation for this, we were chatting back and forth and saying, oh my gosh, you know, I'm a veteran art teacher, but it also feels like year one, right? Because I have to develop new strategies and processes and habits. And so I think, you know, the advice would be, don't feel like you have to do all that on your own, right? Like if I can borrow some of your ideas, or if I can start a little bit further down the path because I'm learning from you, maybe that'll help me not feel like I'm overwhelmed in starting everything from scratch, right? And I think the other thing that's really exciting, and I see a lot of comments in the chat about this, is we're so, you know, ideally arts education is embracing all the skills, all the elements, principles, like all the foundational work that helps you have the ability to create great work. And we're also working up to that conceptual, thematic, that expressive work that's reflecting our culture and people and times. You know, it's like, this is a moment that you, depending on where you are, you might explore a different facet of arts instruction that you don't usually, because you're in a different situation. So I think conceptual or theme-based or looking at those big ideas in art what a great time to do that, right? What a time to make art history and culture come to life, especially because we're living in a moment unlike any that I think I'll ever see in my lifetime again, right? So you know, the arts can really be helpful at this time.
I agree completely. What do you think is next?
I have my crystal ball here to the side, so I'll look into. I'll say, you know, honestly, this school year is going to, I think, look very much like it looks now. Like, we will, as individual educators and as school communities, I think folks are learning and adapting and sort of building that out, their curriculum and their approach. So I think we can expect more of this continuing throughout the school year. And I think beyond this, I think what we're going to see is that the virtual or the hybrid will probably supplement the live, or will be able to provide for students that might have a hard time accessing. So I think there's going to be some continued with the virtual in some capacity. So I would really urge everyone to document, save all your videos, save all your lessons, meet with your colleagues, exchange plans, because I think, you know, education, it's often slow to change, even though right now it's pretty swift. Oh, and there's our 1 minute.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mario, for bringing us all together and for all of the hard work you put in for this evening. Thank you,
Louisa. Appreciate it. So we're going to transition here in a second to Q&A. Can I have a virtual round of applause for all of our guests, for Earl, for Armin, for Alicia, for Louisa, for being so generous and dedicating their time, but also sharing their good ideas and strategies with us. We really appreciate all of you. So from the bottom of our NAEA hearts, thank you so much for helping us to problem solve and, you know, really make this town hall be a lively discussion. So before we go to this Q&A, just some of the themes that I'm hearing, and I would love if anyone wants to put the themes that you're hearing in the chat, kind of like 1 or 2 words, but I'm hearing a lot about self-care, flexibility is key, being solutions oriented, building and relying on your network, focus on social emotional learning, focus on equity, diversity, inclusion. Whether that is for you as an individual educator, whether that's for your approach, whether that's for your curriculum and your content and your choice of materials, there's layers and layers and layers, but that work is so critical because you're doing it for your students, right? You're doing it for your students. Resilience. And we always talk about that in terms of our students, but I think it really applies to our educators. And then this focusing on ideas as well as processes, right? So really balancing that out. So, and I love these ideas that we're seeing coming up on the side here. So we also received some questions later in the day today, and I'm matching them up with some comments in the chat. So bear with me, I'm gonna throw out some of these combo questions, but the first one, our colleague Sharon submitted this afternoon and had a question around how to best serve the early childhood and special education populations virtually. What is the best way to make sure we're meeting those students and accommodations when you're working through a screen? So if anyone can jump in and give us just some initial thoughts on that would be really helpful.
I can very quickly say, you know, with some of these kiddos, we already want to have as many of our instructions visual. And in some ways it's easy to provide the visuals. It takes a little time in advance, but then you set that up in a slide, in a Google slide form. So, you know, you need to chunk things up in visuals. I have been fortunate to have some of our special ed teachers pushing in on my virtual lessons. And then I've also been creating breakout rooms for those special ed teachers and for the therapists. And so after I introduce the lesson, I've already sent my lesson plans to the teacher at the beginning of the week so they know what I'm teaching, and then they go into the breakout room and they work in a very small group with those students. So that's what I've been doing so far this year.
Excellent, excellent advice. Alicia?
Yeah, and I would just jump on that to say, use the whole student, right? So they should be moving, they should be seeing, they should be, right? That we can engage them. When I pop into younger kids' classrooms, one of the benefits is all of them have their screens on. So, all right, our middle school and high school students, there's other issues, right? But those little ones, they have screens on, and they're willing. The issue of course, is, they can't manipulate the technology in front of them without assistance, but they can move their bodies. They're willing to get up out of their chairs. They're willing to use their voices. They're willing to unmute. They love to hear each other. So the more that you can really get them using all of those multiple learning strategies that use all of those things every time you see them.
I love that. And, I also think I wish I ran a parent professional development organization on the side, because I would be so busy, because I think it's also about building up their muscles to understand how they can support their child in a learning environment, which is different than just your home environment oftentimes. So I think, parents are also key. I'm going to try to cover as much ground as possible. So please go with me and go with the flow as we go through this process. So our next Q&A for this section, Maurizio asks, my greatest challenge teaching art online is the lack of supplies at students' homes. What suggestions are there for making art with what children have available at home? This question also comes up from a couple other people in the chat around if it's an uneven playing field in terms of hybrid, where some are in school and some are at home and the supplies aren't even. How does that affect learning and grading? So Armand, looks like you were ready to jump in for at least the beginning of that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that our district especially has been, we had an initial question about, but I tied it in with our art history lessons by starting way back at the beginning when people first started mark making. And that's the resourcefulness. And of course, now we have a great cultural tie-in with, hey, you might live in a place where you don't have everything that you need all of the time or what other people have. So it became almost kind of a, go find what you have, like what can you find? Do you have pencil? Do you have ink? Do you have like something from your mom's purse? Who knows what in the world you've got. But here's the idea. And as long as we stick to that big idea, then it really doesn't matter too much as to the medium that they're using. And so they can look at it and participate with whatever they've got at home. Some people have a full-on studio, I'm finding, and some people are like, I draw stick people, I use this pencil for all my classes. Is that going to work? And I say yes.
I love that. And this is not even in jest. I'll say when I was a kid, aluminum foil, Kleenex, tape, and string, I could make anything. I mean, that's literally why I'm in this career, because I just found what I could and I built things from it, and that kept me engaged. Luisa, you were going to add to this.
Oh, yes, we've had some of those same challenges in our school system. And I would say also, I want to connect with what you said, Armin. I've done some really great virtual art museum visits, like field trips, where I've taken the kids and we focused on art and we talked about the elements of art and art criticism. So I agree that this is a great time to have lessons like that. In addition, I've had colleagues who have done really cool scavenger hunts where we might be learning about the color wheel. And if they don't have crayons or markers, they go around and they look for the colors and objects around their house. And then they create this virtual color wheel. I also have several colleagues who work with a program called Seesaw. And if your school system has that, that's a wonderful program that even has tools right online where a kid can create art digitally. So they're not lacking for having art supplies. So, sorry.
Great suggestions. And I see all sorts of natural pigments, painting with coffee and cotton swabs, recipe for homemade clay. The chat is really active. This is wonderful. We're going to do one more before we wrap for the evening. This is probably the most jam-packed hour of the day. And I think I'm going to throw this one over to you, Earl, just to get us started. We have Panina, one of our colleagues, submitted a question around serving a pretty large body of students, about 650 students. And when you're doing that through multiple different environments, engagement can be a little not as frequent for everyone. How do you think about grading when you're in this environment and you have that many students that you're serving?
Yeah, that's a very challenging situation. I think you have to be creative. and work within the school parameters, and maybe talk to your administrators, your guidance counselors. What are some ways? Give me some options, but again, come with some recommendations. Goes back to the prior question. I've seen teachers that had all the best resources in the world, but they didn't teach the best lessons. So be creative, have solutions. And my guess is during this pandemic, your administrators would be very receptive to hearing your thoughts on another way to do the grading. Because, you know, we know that everything, we're in uncharted waters here. And so things are going to be different. So come up with another solution. What makes sense for you and your students, and have those conversations with your administrators.
Absolutely. Really great advice. I'm going to transition us. So anyone else want to get a word in on grading before I go to the next? Okay. I have to thank everyone so much. Once again, thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight. Excellent experts that you are. Thank you to all of our members that joined. I would like to bring up a slide that shows you a very unique resource that is tied to this conversation. So all of our guests tonight gave us some of their wisdom in advance. So we put together a one-pager takeaway that everyone will have access to that gives you some starter ideas for navigating this time. So this is, you can see the link here. And then you can see some screenshots of what this beautiful document looks like. Props to my team for this design. But it's tips for success, go-to resources, and some self-care ideas. Some of these ideas you heard this evening, some they'll be fresh for you. And then I wanted to encourage folks to consider joining us in our next 2 town halls in November. We'll be focusing on social emotional learning and the arts, both taking care of our students and ourselves. That's on November 17th. And then on December 15th, we're looking at equity, diversity, inclusion, and art education, moving from those ideas and concepts to action. We are so thankful for this vibrant and brilliant community. If you are not a member of the community, we encourage you and ask you to join NAEA, because this is a place where you can exchange ideas, find support, find your tribe and your people. And it's something that can really, you contribute and it feeds back into you automatically. So we are just so proud and thrilled of everyone that could join tonight. This content will be available. There'll be a recording of it afterwards, and it'll be available to you. And I want to give a shout out to Dennis and Krista on my team who are behind the scenes, and then our colleague Kevin, who helped us with the animation for the intro and outro. So sending everyone good energy and appreciation, and please take good care. Thank you.